Kick it off. All right, looks like it is recording. Good job. All right, so hopefully you can all see that. Um, introduction to HTML. Let's go. All right, so we're gonna go through a little introduction. I lied. I said history of JavaScript. Oh, sorry, wrong slide. I should clean up the topics, but it's gonna be World Wide Web. I'll talk about that first. All right, so introduction of World Wide Web. This is the guy who did it, Tim Berners-Lee. I had to look this up. I know this story, but I had to get his name right. So he invented the World Wide Web, WWW, in 1989 while working at CERN. If you don't know what CERN is, I'll tell you about it in a little bit. If you don't know, the military actually invented the internet, and from what I heard, it was the U.S. military. But you know, that's who knows who actually invented it. But it was for military purposes at first, right? And then the World Wide Web was developed again. This is a government agency, but it was conceived, developed to meet the demand for automated information sharing between scientists and universities and institutes around the world. So, you know, at first that was the idea. It was kind of private, very private kind of network that then became public, right? So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, again, developed by this guy, Tim Berners-Lee in 1989, which, by the way, I had to look this guy up. Now he is Sir. He's from England, Sir. He's a Sir now. And I think his worth is 50 million, if I'm correct, for all of his contributions, I guess. 50 million. So he did well, but to be honest, he'll be remembered, right? I mean, I had to look him up, but he will always at least be tagged here for the creator of this, right? So the primary author of HTML, with the assistance of his colleagues at CERN, which is an international scientific organization based in Geneva. But when he invented it, you know, it was very rudimentary. It was meant for converting, you know, using Word documents as a file, converting them on the internet. So anybody around the world or who with an internet connection, I guess, could share some of this scientific data. That was it. I mean, there wasn't, the thought of it really wasn't to be a rich experience. It was meant to be, you know, a very basic structure and layout for a web page. That was the idea, right? And you can imagine scientific data, what that might look like, right? So this is CERN. They have that giant atom smasher there. I'd really like to see this thing run, to be honest. I've seen it in some movies. But they have that giant circular underground collider that they have in Geneva, and it crosses the border. So I'm not a physics major, but it's interesting stuff, right? They shoot an atom through it, and they do all sorts of particle research there, right? So European Organization for Nuclear Research, known as CERN, is European research organization that operates the largest particle physics library in the world, established in 1954, located in Geneva on the Franco-Swiss border. Home of the Atom Smasher, Large Hadron Collider. I don't know, I like this stuff because I always like to know the context of what we're learning, right? I mean, it gives a little bit more background instead of just kind of looking at some text, right? I prefer that kind of thing. So, all right. History of the World Wide Web. So this was kind of the genesis of it. Let me try to answer that question there if I can get to this with my Zoom meeting here. Hadron, yeah, right. I know I misspelled it, right? Hadron. I knew when I said it, it was Higgs boson. Not sure that is Hadron, right? I must have misspelled it pretty badly. But anyhow, Tim Berners-Lee, 1989, invented the web. 1990, he developed HTML code. 1991, the first live websites launched. So 91, right. I can remember as a kid, I'm showing my age, I remember this thing, the internet, we had 24-bit modems, right, baud, with those, you guys know what I'm talking about. And nothing really had an interface. I remember you would have like a bulletin board and Connect. I remember a guy called me up and just wanted to verify whatever that I was going to use his bulletin board to pull down some whatever. I don't even remember what it was. I remember going on, I'm like, this is not very impressive. Why is this guy calling me? This thing's not gonna this is not gonna last. I just remember it was no big deal, right? And then when they started doing interfaces and they, you know, you had these first websites here. Sorry, I only really picked it up a little bit later. I think 96. And then um, I realized the benefit of it. I mean, it's hard to explain to someone who's grown up, you know, last 20 years. They might not remember, but I remember watching wrestling as a kid and having to, you know, there'd be an event, pay-per-view, an event that would happen on Monday night, and we wouldn't get in Canada till Wednesday night. And I remember I had to pick up the phone and dial Toronto Star, which is a newspaper, and get the results, and hope that, you know, they would update it. And you'd be that, like, very analog experience, right? And then they had these web pages. I remember being in university, and then you could get it at midnight, you know, 11:59, right away you get the results. I thought, this is incredible. This is amazing. Like, the information is flowing so fast, and it wasn't the case before. It was very delayed, right? So enough about me, right? Mid 2000, right? Mobile phones explode, and we're gonna see what happens sorry, we're going this way. Let me get my pointer here, sorry. We're going this way, all right? 1991, first website launch. Then we'll look at some original kind of websites, right? HTML1, very flat, very static, right? Very blocky. We're already at HTML5, by the way, so, you know. 1996 style sheets release, cascading style sheets, which is the short form, which is the long form for CSS. And we'll get into what that is. It makes it look pretty. It makes all those nice styles. So we move from a blocky web to kind of a stylish web. Google launches, 1998. That was a big deal, right? What was this Google all about? I remember before you just had Netscape Navigator, I think, and some other search tools. And then mid 2000s, that's when the mobile devices launched, right? And because of these mobile devices, things exploded. Client side, JavaScript exploded. And we'll get into another graphic when we learn JavaScript, how the impact of this was very big, just as big as, you know, some of this, well, maybe not the creation of the web, but very high impact around this kind of event, right? When the first iPhone came on the market, we didn't want blocky interfaces. We want very fast, very, very responsive kind of web interfaces. All right. Mobile Safari launches its first browser in 2007, right? That's probably iPad that they Apple decided, why not we create our own browser? We don't need Windows operating system. We can have our own. That was a pretty big step. 2010, some guy, Ethan Marcotte, coins the term responsive web design. So what does that mean? And you'll learn it. You'll learn it when you're really getting in. If you were to be very good at CSS and become somebody who does work on web pages, somebody at some time will say, hey, I want my web page to look good on a phone. So what does that involve? Well, there's a lot of templates, and there's a lot of things you need to do to make that screen look, have a good user experience for the user in a phone. You can only imagine, I'm sure, when you navigate sites, there's some sites that are awful on the phone, right? It's a whole science around that. 2015, Google sets mobile-friendly deadline. I'm not sure the context of that, but anyhow, I guess we stopped there. It says 27 years of existence. It's probably a lot more than that now if we do the math, but anyhow, kind of an interesting kind of thing there. All right, so let me just break out of here for a second here. I think somewhere in here I had some links I wanted to kind of to look at here because they're kind of cool. All right. So this is like what an original website would look like back in, what did we say, 1997? This is what it would look like. I think this is the exact replica of what they had. Very basic, very black and white. Some hyperlinks here, right? They were saying they can just kind of link to documents. Very linear kind of thing, right? And this is a way of linking documents together. You can imagine scientific kind of information, how much this would help instead of drafting through Word documents and emailing them around, you know, or faxing them. Maybe they were faxing them at this time. Imagine that, you know? So anyhow, this is what it would look like. And if we were to look at the source code, why not? Let's do it. Let's dig in there. We'll look at our, if you remember, we can either do Control F12 or we can do more tools. Look at our developer tools. Oh, that's ugly. That's kind of, so by the way, if you're ever using this tool, you have the option here in this kind of 3 dotted line here. You can decide, do I want to break this whole window out? Do I want to keep it on the left panel, dock it to the right, or put it on the bottom? Maybe I'll put it on the bottom for now. Okay, maybe not. Maybe we'll put it to the left again. All right. And when you're using this, we're not going to get into some of these other advanced things because these are more kind of, as we start getting into other programming languages on the web, we're going to be using these quite a bit. Some of them are advanced. I use them every day, to be honest. Some of this, when I get very into the network traffic, I would be using that. But for our purposes, we'd be looking at elements, the markup, right? So if we were to look at the body of this, it's very old. I mean, you're going to be learning about this today, but I can just see from my eye that it's older style HTML1, because a lot of these things are not, like this DL, are not around anymore. I don't believe I think they're depreciated. And not a lot of styles. You know, if this is our style sheet down here, there's not much. There's nothing really going on. So we have a flat static web, which I'm sure in 1997 was, you know, quite incredible, really. The other link I want to look at was, again, this is from the CERN website. You can kind of navigate around it. Where was it? I saw something cool. I think this was it. Yeah, this is like an emulator, really, right? This is maybe what a blackboard, a bulletin board would look like. I was talking about how you would connect with your modem, and this is what you get. This was the internet. This was like on your terminal window, right? I don't know if you ever played Fallout 3. There's terminal windows everywhere, and it's green and black like this. That's what it reminds me of. Fallout 3. Telnet. Yes, Telnet. How could I forget that? Telnet. Right. Right. Anyhow, it's kind of what it looked like. There was another link in there, sorry. And maybe I missed it. Let me go back. Maybe I link it in there again. Hopefully I got it later on, but we'll continue. It's I think it's later on. It shows one of the first browsers, I believe. But let's continue on from there. All right. So a bit of context. CERN, scientific documents. We went through this, history of the World Wide Web. So we have versioning going on here. So if you can look back to 1989, Tim Berners-Lee invented the WWW, World Wide Web. He invented HTML in 1991. So again, it was drafted. It wasn't meant to be anything special aside from data, you know, sharing documents, a step up from Word documents on the web. But as you can see, as the time went on, they started adding different versions. As they're adding 2.0, 3.0, they're adding features to it. By 1999, we have something called W3C. So when we talk about JavaScript as well, they have a body called a group called ECMA. It's a kind of a group that kind of oversees the standards of the language. So I guess we have some recommendation of a standard that we want going forward, you know, to make sure that, you know, that these releases get put out by then there's millions of people using it, so we got to make sure that it's not going to break the web, right? As you can tell, like as we get farther down, now we're already up to HTML5 and vastly more superior than HTML1. Because again, there's more demand now for this static web to be something more than that, dynamic, right? Okay, I think this was it. The first static website. That's what it looked like. That's kind of what I believe one of the websites that they created back in 1997 would look like. And navigating a web page on the initial version of something called NXT, machine with the first browser, very static experience compared to, the fast responsive web we have today. So this was the cool one. I wanted to see it here, see if it works. Let's see here. Bear with me here as I'm context switching. All right, hopefully this works for you guys. All right, so this is kind of cool. If you launch the browser here, hopefully it'll give us a nice emulator and we'll see it. Yeah, look at that. That's super old. Look at this. We're replicating the old, the old PCs. I don't know how to navigate this, I don't think, but I think if you just click on them, I hope. Oh, it says not found. But you can just imagine the experience on some kind of terminal, one of those old school Windows 3.1 or even that classic Macintosh. I remember kind of had something like this. So yeah, this is what it looked like, right? Can you imagine that? Like, this is all you got. Again, the whole purpose of it is that information is flowing quickly, lightning fast. You can get news right away. You can get information right away, stock quotes if you want, but this would be the experience that you would have. And believe me, at that time, this was beyond high tech. This was incredible, just like I'm sure the dot matrix printer was incredible at the time, right? But this is where we were. So anyhow, I like that. What else was there? Another link I wanted to show you. It's still up. It's actually quite funny. Let's take a look at this one. So there's a movie, Space Jam. I think it was like I don't even remember, but this site is still up. It's a long time ago. It's like 30 years ago. And it's just a site of links, right? This is what it was. You can tell, look at this frames. Everything was a frame. Everything was just a picture, big text. 1996, Warner Brothers, right? Still up there. I remember Michael Jordan, and it was against the Looney Tunes, right? The cartoon characters, I believe that's what it was, right? So anyhow, I don't know. I'll leave you to dig around this thing. I don't know. Oh, there you go. See, like it's so hard to navigate. It's not responsive. It's like, okay, I got to click this picture here, and I'm sure there's like an image map, right, on one of these. It's old school. Okay, it actually has and it downloaded something. Hopefully, I'm not going to be hacked now. So I don't even know how to navigate this. It's so hard. It's quite interesting. Anyways, they're making one I imagine they're going to make an incredible one now, right? But so this is like 30. What am I? Yeah, 30 years old, right? 20 years old. 23 years old. Yeah. So anyways, it's difficult to navigate, right? And again, if we use our developer tools and kind of like dig into this thing, it's going to reveal some old school kind of like tags and features and pictures and stuff like that, right? So frame after frame after frame. Now, don't worry about that, but we've gotten far away from that. Anyhow, just a very interesting experience. Now they're called near locks before coming Monstars. All right. I see I'm not up to speed on this movie anyways. But anyways, that was interesting. It's still up, and there's a whole bunch of sites there that are still up. If you dig in the old web, they're still around. So I thought that was a pretty cool kind of context. So explore at your own leisure, I guess. But we'll get into what HTML is. What is it? So hypertext markup language. So remember, this is not This is not a programming language. This was meant to be a markup language. It's just markup. It just defines the document, which is the web page. That's it. And what reveals that document and interprets it is that web browser. Web browsers such as Chrome, Firefox, all those things. The modern browsers that I told you to install can handle the newer versions of HTML5 and the newer versions of all this latest and greatest technology. The older browsers like IE1, IE2, they are meant for like HTML1 and 2, right? Just like a car from 1950 is not going to be able to run on electric unless you mod it, right? You can mod the markup to work on older browsers, but it takes a lot of wedges, I guess we could say, or add-ons, or kind of, there's just a lot of things you need to do to make it even be visually appealing and load properly, right? But it's designed for the modern browser. So HTML can be complicated, very complicated, or it can be simple as you want it to be. You can write it very cleanly, or you can get very in depth with it and be very repetitive. There's once you get into a lot of coding and stuff like that, there's like the brute force approach where you're just copy pasting everything like crazy, or there's ways to like reuse pieces of code and markup and things like that, so that the structure is easier for the developer to work with. So HTML consists of a series of elements, which we'll get into, which you use to enclose, wrap, or mark up different parts of the content to make it appear or act in a certain way. So the enclosing tags can make content into a hyperlink to connect another page like we just saw. It can use to italicize a word, which means, that kind of using fonts, the slanted font, and so on. For example, here's an example here. My cat is grumpy. I hope not. But anyhow, that itself is just plain text, which a browser will view as plain text. But if you wanted it to appear as a paragraph with spacing between words or blocks of words, you just need to wrap it in a tag. And then the browser does the rest. The browser will know what to do. Inside of your markup, you can have things all concatenated together, but the browser knows how to pick up the tag and what to do with it. So within that tag, there is some logic that the browser figures out what you mean by that. So if you wrap it in a paragraph, the browser will know, okay, well, I need to add, say, a space above and a space below to format that content, that inner content for the visual representation, right? So tags. So HTML tag, you got to remember they're case insensitive. So you can write them in uppercase or lowercase. You can mix and match, right? So we have a title there, tag. It can be written as all lowercase, all uppercase, mix and match. I don't prefer this. This is not. You'll see after a while that you'll have a preference either way, either for title or uppercase. To be honest, it's your preference. I like uppercase because you'll get a lot of content inside that is smaller, so it kind of really stands out. Like, this is the block. I know where to find it. But again, it's up to you, right? Best practice is to write all. Okay, so they're saying best practice is to write all tags in lowercase for consistency, readability, and other reasons. I've seen both, put it that way, and I've done both. So it all depends on the, maybe you might get in a project, it's the style of the organization that you're working with that kind of drives that. Personally, on my own, I like uppercase. That's my preference. You may have yours. So the recap, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It's the standard markup language for creating web pages. Describes the structure of a web page. We'll get into that. HTML consists of a series of elements. We'll get into what elements is, but element tells the browser how to display the content. HTML label pieces such as content like this is a heading, and this is a paragraph, and this is a link. So what that means is for each one of those for the context of each one of those, what I just said, you can wrap that and it'll know what to do with it. So if you need a header, there's an element for a header. If you need a paragraph, there's an element for that. If you need a link, which is a hyperlink, which is one of those things we clicked on that transfer you to another page, the browser knows these things internally. Into the browser has an engine, so it knows how to decipher this information. And we want to get into browsers, right? So we already talked about the big three, I guess you could say. The big three, although you may have your favorite. Google Chrome, Firefox is there's a history about Firefox there we'll get into some other time. Microsoft, Internet Explorer, I would go with Edge. They had to rewrite their whole engine because Explorer just wasn't fast. It's not fast. So they kind of created, they dumped their whole engine and created a new one. And we'll get into what an engine is when we get into JavaScript. And we have Edge now. How would I rate Brave compared to the big three? I can't say that I've used Brave, to be honest, so I don't have context there. But now that you mention it, I'm going to go download it. To be honest, the organizations I work at, they usually handle these big three, so I kind of do that. I mean, I have a whole bunch installed, like Opera and Firefox, but you know what? If you tell me it's pretty good, I'll look at it. But because I do so much development work, because I'm using the web tools a lot, I prefer Chrome just because it's very fast, and also because it has good dev tools. And I don't have iOS. I mean, I have an iPad, but I rarely use it. I either use my Windows or I use Android. So, all right. So your users can use any browser. So you got to remember that they can be using anything to view your website. If you so create a website, I'm going to be interrupted in 1 second. Hold on. Sorry about that. My son wants to play Roblox, so I have to give him my phone and hope that he stays quiet so I can talk to you folks. All right, so users can be on any browser. Remember that. You have to remember that if you are creating a website, you need to handle all these different types of viewports, all these different types of browsers, right? You could be using IE6 and IE7, which I hope you're not, but be aware of it. Be aware that, and I have to be aware of it too because of my preference to Chrome. Sometimes I don't check how things look on Firefox and it could be broken. I don't know until it gets to QA and the person testing it lets me know that, your search bar is, it's out of place or it doesn't look the same, and then you have to compare mock-ups and you get into all that stuff, right? Which I don't like. That's not my wheelhouse, but I know how to do it, but I don't like it that much. So slight differences with the way the browsers will render your site because they have different engines, which means you need to test your sites in all of them. Just a little insight to that, a lot of QA people have different types of tools for this. If it's a very good organization, or meaning organization with money, they might use something like BrowserStack. It's a tool that can run emulators on all browsers and devices. Instead of firing up this browser and that browser, you can quickly render it and see what it looks like in your target of choice. Another point, so now you don't need to download every browser right now, but I want to make sure that you install, okay, right. Well, I want to make sure you install Chrome and Firefox, right? Because that I would say is the most popular, I would say, but it's you'd have to look that up, to be honest. I mean, other browsers like Apple Safari and Microsoft Edge are great, and you should test them out. But in terms of development experience, I find those two are the best. And there's a lot of extensions you can get, and I already mentioned, like, there's a concept of cookies when you start, not cookies you eat, but cookies when you get into storage. There is something called cookie, which you can store bits of information. I'm probably sure you know that as you go to a site and you go to look at, say, I don't know, you're looking at comic books or something like that, website will record that you visited it and record that you may have looked at something, and then all of those ads pop up everywhere. You know, now you go to some site and you're like, I just looked at that, now I'm getting advertisements. It's because bits of information of what you have used in your browser is tracked, if you didn't know. And each browser has, so you may have extensions. I use it every day. So for Chrome or Firefox, there's like extensions for, you know, editing the cookies, seeing what it's all about, you know, kind of for the development that I need to work with. It's a question here. Is there any simulators to validate the web page in all browsers? Yes, there's something called Browser Stack, but that's just one. It's a simulator to validate, so not only all browsers, all devices, meaning not only all devices, but all viewports. And when I talk about viewports, and maybe I'm jumping ahead here, but why not? Why not just quickly look at this while we're, let me just break out of this here. So let's go to, say, I don't know. Let's look at this site here. So if you go to your developer tools, and there isn't something called here for toggle device toolbar. So now I can take a look at what this would look like in Galaxy, and then I can look at it in iPhone. This is kind of basic, right? iPad looks like this, and iPhone looks like this, right? And you can see that now it's looking like what it should look like on a phone in that viewport. And it should have a menu that we would hope to see. There's a bit of a bug there. You can tell it's a slider, right? But we would hope, and right, if now you can see you have this menu here that has a mobile kind of feel to it. And you can see that now it's kind of getting that feel. Now this is a web version, not a native version, right? So as we're switching back to different viewports, the HTML needs to be responsive in case I go back to desktop, right? See how it kind of, now that doesn't just happen overnight. That there's a lot of people working on that to make it work all that way. So I showed you with the browser, but that's very limited. So they have other tools to test all of those views. So if you wanted to say work on this toolbar, you got to look through it in all browsers and all viewports and all devices and all operating systems and all that. That your organization may support. All right. So continuing on with web browsers. So the purpose of the web browser, Chrome, Edge, Firefox, Safari, is to read HTML documents and display them. A browser does not display the tags, but uses them to determine how to display the document. So in your lab today, which, you know, I'm gonna wrap, I'll stop talking about 10 minutes here and at least give you a little bit of a start for the lab. You can spend 45 minutes or whatever getting into what I talked about, and then we'll come back and get more into it to refresh you and then hopefully finish off. But in this example here, it's showing, you know, you're going to create a, if you look at that extension, that's a file as you did in your first lab, html5.html. But if you notice, the browser has done something here. It's rendering out. It's translating those tags, and it's outputting this kind of bolded text and the smaller text. And behind the scenes, there are tags in there, but again, you're not seeing it to the view. It's not rendering to the user. It's not displaying the tags. If you close them and start them correctly, it'll know what to do. If you have a broken tag that's not closed, it won't know what to do. You'll figure it out. You'll go through that. Let's see here. I'll quickly just do this quickly, and then we'll get started in the lab. So an HTML element, you got to remember, this is the autonomy of it. It has an opening tag right here, and it has a closing tag. And these angle brackets with the tag itself, and then you close it off. The content is in between, right? So if you have a tag that starts like this angle bracket, P angle bracket, and you have the same kind of thing, but without this slash here, it's going to be messed up. because it doesn't know how to, it doesn't have a matching tag. Now it may not throw an error, but it's not going to translate in the way that you might expect. So you got to be mindful of that. So the opening tag consists of the name of the element, which for this example is the P for paragraph, and then it's wrapped in an open and close angle bracket. Opening tag marks the beginning of the element where it begins to take effect. So once it hits P, it starts to say this is going to be a paragraph. It's going to then look at the content, and it's going to consider it paragraph text, and then it's going to hit this. It's going to be searching for a closing tag. If it doesn't find it, it's just going to keep searching and searching and searching until you find it and close it. Hopefully it is closing. Failing to close it is a beginner error that can cause you errors, just so you know. All right. So let's stop sharing right now. Stop for a second here. I'll stop recording if I can. One second. Hold that thought. All right, so let me share my screen again, stop recording.